straight because
do you think that these orbs, these aliens, these things we're talking about, these spiritual things, are they Nephilim?
Let's
get our terms straight.
Let's get our terms straight because Nephilim in Genesis 6 and Numbers 13, there's the only time it appears, they are the offspring. These are the gigantic offspring of fallen angels and human women. So those are three different entities right there. A fallen angel is up here, you got a human woman, and then they mate and they produce this hybrid, which is a Nephilim. So the typical idea is, at least that's rooted in the book of Enoch and Second Temple period Jewish literature, not just Enoch, but others, Jubilees, is that when the Nephilim die, when their physical body dies, their spirit lives on. And that spirit is an unclean spirit. It's a demonic spirit, and that is what is known as a demon in the New Testament. And so when you come along to the New Testament, all of a sudden, boom, you seem like, demons on every page, every other page. And you're like, well, this, at least in the Gospels, you're like, well, this is weird. You didn't see this in the Old Testament. It's very rare to have a demonic spirit. You see in Deuteronomy 32 and other passages, at least in the Hebrew, talking about a shade or shadim. That's the Hebrew word. But so the question then is, what you do see is in the Greek, the gigantos is the word that it's used in Genesis 6. We get the word giant from that. But the word gigantos in the Greek, classical Greek, has to do with these earthborn hybrids. So the question is, could this demon, which is bound to the earth, could it go visit Mars? Well, how does it get there? See, remember, so it doesn't have the ability, and we just think, oh, it's spiritual. It could just fly there, or it could just poof. But we don't have. I would think the answer would be no, because they're bound to the earth. Because what you do see is in the Old Testament, later they're called Rephaim. And usually when outside of the book of Moses, the Pentateuch, the Rephaim are spiritual beings that are usually in Sheol, that are underneath, or the land of the Rephaim being these demonic realms, so to speak. But so I would tend to see that a demon can't leave this earth. Now, a fallen angel or another angel, there's no limits. They can go anywhere they want. So do they have a mining operation on Mars? And that's where they're getting this material? Though there's a lot of theories.
Right.
What if they're in a different dimension and they use the ships to transcend from one dimension to another dimension? It's
a technology.
Yeah, that we don't have, but it can show up here and we can see it, and it'll go within a mile within a split second, but it's still tangible in a sense, right? To our reality. Maybe it's a transcending type of. That's what I've thought for a while. Well,
I'm not opposed to that, because the question that I think, no, not at all. The question, I just try to reconcile it with, well, couldn't they, if he's going from God to Daniel and in Babylon, why couldn't he transcend that in 1 minute or 1 hour? Why did it take him 3 weeks? And so there is some level of hindrance. Now, maybe they had their frequencies locked into one another. And so the one angel who's hindering, or the princes that were hindering the one angel, they were just, that's what was happening. So they do have the ability to go from one place to another very quick, but it's still physical. I don't think you were saying it was not physical, but I think the challenge that we have is what does it mean to be interdimensional? I don't think anybody knows.
We can't describe it. It's impossible to describe. Just like what we're trying to talk about is kind of just impossible to describe, because we don't know how these things interact. We don't know. Like we have these terms that we get from Scripture, right? Spiritual, supernatural, angelic, demonic, God, heavens, plural. But that's it. That's all we got. And then we're seeing stuff that's like, hey, that doesn't make sense, and we're just trying to figure out what the Bible means by those words based on what we're seeing. So I wonder, kind of going off of Nick's question here. So now we've got some terms, right? We've got the angelic, but okay, let me not lose track here. I've got a lot going on in my mind, and I'm trying to keep it all together. So we've got the angelic, which is the benevolent, supernatural, or whatever you want to call them, right? We've got the malevolent side, which is demonic, fallen angel, possibly the orbs, the light orbs that appear and disappear and that are just coy and kind of deceive people. We've got, I mean, those light orbs are also what appear to like Stephen Greer and Chris Bledsoe and stuff. So that right there kind of leads you to believe that the light orbs are going to be malevolent. They're going to be dark always. So a demon is a disembodied spirit of a Nephilim. That would be the general understanding. Yep. Okay. That spirit, that disembodied spirit, is a human spirit. Like when it was born of a woman, this Nephilim creature, it was endowed with a human spirit, or is this a angelic spirit, as in one that fell with the rebellion?
No, it's actually both, because the Nephilim that's walking around that is generally considered tall, and then dies, their spirit is a mixture. It's a hybrid of the material. And again, we're talking about genetic material. This is physical material, right? I mean, when a fallen angel comes down and mates with the human woman, he's putting inside of her his own physical genetic material, and then she's providing her own 23 chromosomes, and then it's producing a child, which is this hybrid Nephilim, and then the child is born. And so this hybrid is growing up, certainly physical. We see that, and they're fighting them in the book of Numbers, and David was fighting Goliath. So they are physical beings, but they have genetic material from the two sides, the physical woman and the heavenly created physical fallen angel. And then they're down here. And so their spirit is what I mean, in that sense, we ask, well, what is our spirit? Well, we know that we have a spirit, and our human spirit was created as a derivative of the genetic material from a man and a human man and a human woman. So, but in that sense, our spirit is still a spirit. So their spirit is still rooted in the material from a fallen angel and a human woman, but they are fallen. They're a hybrid.
Dang. So whereas our spirit, when we die, would go, since we're not Nephilim, obviously, would go to, let's say, like heaven or hell eternally, right? Their spirit, a Nephilim, when it dies, roams the earth, right? It doesn't go to hell instantaneously.
I think back, what you do have, and here's an interesting, fun idea. At least I'm going to tell you the thought of what was going on, percolating in the minds of Jews in, let's say 150 BC. We do know from the biblical Old Testament, the book of Isaiah and others, that Rephaim is a spirit. So let me say it this way. In the first 5 books of Moses, if you look at the word Rephaim, it refers to a giant, a living physical giant. But later, that word Rephaim is referring to these spirits that are in the underworld. So they are down in Sheol. Yes. Now, in the book of Jubilees, chapter 10, not scripture, but I'm just telling you what's percolating in their mind, is that it's a very fascinating story that at the time of the flood, God was going to judge all of the earth and kill all living beings, including humans and the Nephilim, which are physical.
Right.
But then a guy by the name of Mastema, which is another word for Satan, it's very clear. Mastema goes and says, hey, God, I have a request. Can you leave? I know you're going to send them all to Sheol. Can you leave me 10% so that I can be the ruler over them, demons, and I can use them to tempt the sons of Noah, and they'll roam the earth, but the rest you can take down to Sheol. So in that sense, for whatever reason in the story, God says that's fine. So he allows the 10% to now be under Satan's control. Well, that's interesting. In Matthew chapter 12, Satan is called the prince and the ruler of demons. So you're like, well, that's pretty fat. Those are Jesus's words, right? And so later in the book of Revelation chapter 9, we see that the Sheol, or the bottomless pit, is open. And what do you have? this demonic horde coming out.
They come back, yeah.
They come back. Now, you know what's fascinating about it? Here's a little nugget. How long do they torment humanity without killing? They're not allowed to kill them. Remember?
3 months?
5 months.
5 months, okay.
How long was the water on the earth? How long did it, if you go back to the book of Genesis, it talks about the water being on the earth and killing everything for 5 months. You're like, well, that's interesting. It's as if God, it took 5 months or whatever to kill everybody off, including all these Nephilim, and they're getting their 5 months of revenge. Interesting parallel. That's all I can say. But nevertheless, that's what you have here is right now when you do have, or in the Gospels, when you have these demonic creatures, these unclean spirits, those are, according to the trajectory of Second Temple thinking, Judaism, those are demonic spirits that were once Nephilim roaming the earth.
Okay. Got it. So that's what a demon is. We know, like fallen angels, we know would be obviously the from the angelic host that rebelled, was sent down with Satan, different than demon. I think that's like, for me, I've been Christian for 30 years, since I was young. It's a pretty recent realization that fallen angels and demons aren't the same thing.
Correct. Yep.
So that wasn't something novel to the Jews, right? They didn't like realize that one day. Like they actually had that in, like you said, Jubilees, Enoch, other Second Temple literature. They actually thought fallen angels and demons were something separate this whole time. We're the ones that have been thinking they're the same thing in like the evangelical circle.
Yes, because what's interesting about it is, I'll give you an example. If you go to Acts chapter 23, when Paul is describing his salvation, his story, he brings up the resurrection, and then the Pharisees, who are very conservative, they said maybe an angel or a spirit has spoken to him. So even there, you have this little hint that they made a distinction between an angel and a spirit. So it was very common, again, in that day to have a distinction for sure.
Okay. I have a thought that I really want to run by you just because we're on the topic. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this. It kind of relates when Nick asked that question with the super chat, it brought it back to mind. And since we got you here, this is my shot, So do you think, I'm going to ask you a couple little questions and then I'm going to ask you the one I just was referencing. Do you think that pre-flood, okay, when Nephilim roamed the earth, when there was the mighty men of renown, of old, when there was this this angelic incursion onto human or on the planet, do you think that it was like technologically advanced?
Well, so according to Genesis chapter 4, we don't know we don't know exactly when this incursion happened. Most people make the assumption that it was in the days of Jared, because Jared means to come down, but that's a loose assumption. We do know in Genesis 4 that technology all of a sudden is described, Tubal Cain and others, right? So metallurgy and other things. We also know from the book of First Enoch, chapter 6, again, not scripture, but again, giving us the understanding of what was talked about in the days of Jesus and before. It was crystal clear that they came down teaching swords, weaponry, metallurgy, the stars, the moon, constellations, herbs. They taught the women to wear cosmetics around their eyes to make them look more beautiful. You're like, that's hey lady, your makeup that was based on according to the book of Enoch, introduced by the fallen angels to make them look better. Pretty fascinating.
I knew there's a reason I prefer my wife El Natural. From now on, when I see her putting on makeup, I'll be like, Nephilim technology, baby.
I want to read something to you right out of the book of Enoch.
Yeah.
So again, this was introduced by the fallen angels in order to seduce mankind, because it's so that would lead to certainly a great level of technology. What we understand today, like we look at the megalithic structures, a lot of what our good friend LA works on is these great ability, the amazing, miraculous perfection of the Giza pyramids, the Great Pyramid. And so, I look at it like this too. We often tend to think of fallen angels unfortunate, but as we referenced earlier, they appear as an angel light. Now, we were joking earlier about marrying off our daughters, right? So imagine for a moment that you get this fallen angel shows up knocking at the door, and all the daughters are looking out, and they're like, "Who is that handsome? Oh my gosh, that guy's gorgeous.
Dennis.
That's Dennis." And they're like, "Man, we want a piece of that action." Well, then, so then they come in, and as we know is typical, there's a little arrangement. He talks to the father. He says, "Man, I've seen the women that they're your daughters that are beautiful, and let's make a trade." And so the father's like, "Well, I got some good-looking daughters. What are you going to give me?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you this technology. I'll set you apart. I'll teach you how to do this. You'll have wealth, power, prestige. You'll be set apart from all of your peers because I'll give it to you. Just give me your daughters." And the daughters over there like, "Sign me up." So it's not necessarily this rape. There's an exchange, and you have this fallen angelic being who's appearing as a beautiful angel. It doesn't always have to be, but certainly had their own wicked intentions in doing what they were doing. And I think that's a more accurate portrait of why technology would be introduced before the flood. And God said, "Enough, I got to get rid of it all."
Yeah, because do we know when the fallen angels made the incursion into humanity? How long before Noah, or how far back before Noah did they do that? Do we know?
We don't know. That's what I'm saying. The theory is that they came down in the time of Jared, which again means to come down, but there's no proof that it happened during that time.
What year was that about, or how many years before Noah do you think?
We could look up Genesis 5.
And the reason I ask, while you're looking that up, the reason I ask is because, dude, think about it. We've had electricity for 120 years or something like that. I don't know when Benjamin Franklin flew that kite. And in let's say 120 years, if somebody in the chat could let me know when Benjamin Franklin flew a kite, that'd be great. In 120 years, we've gone from key on a kite, right, with the lightning bolt, to AI about to take over the planet.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, that's 120 years. So did you find the date of when?
I did. Yep. So based on the Genesis 5, 16, and 17, basically Jared was born around 900 years prior to the flood. So you'd have 900 years of technological advancement as what you just described. Think about what we've had in the last 150 years, right? Or even 200. So imagine 900 years of that.
I mean, we went from Wright brothers and then to the moon, supposedly.
That's another conversation.
You like that?
I like that a lot, yes.
Within what, 60 years or something like that? You know what I mean? So technology, we know this, it exponentially advances. Once you have a certain technology, you keep using it to keep advancing technologically. So if there was this demonic incursion, technological advancement given by these supernatural beings, right, to humanity, and they had 1,000 years to develop that technology, it's no wonder. And look how evil our technological advancement is making the world. You know what I mean? It's not making us more righteous and holy and closer to God.
Nope.
It is for us because we're doing podcasts using this technology.
For the glory of God, baby.
Yeah. But overarchingly, it's been getting kind of much worse, depending on how advanced the technology is getting. So imagine how evil it got on the planet. No wonder it says every thought of man was evil constantly all the time. And God's
from the time they're young. Yep. Boom.
God's like, I gotta wipe these guys out because it's getting pretty bad, Yep. And if we in 60 years went from paper airplanes to the moon, supposedly.
Yeah, electricity is 1972, by the way.
1872.
Sorry. 17. Yeah.
Dude, I'm way off.
17, yeah.
Okay, so what's that? 300 years?
almost. Yeah.
Okay, so but
Still,
regardless, 300 years.
But that's
these-
limited. I mean,
these
remember
dudes had-
Benjamin Franklin with the kite, right? The
Right.
key, right?
Yeah,
He's getting
yeah,
lightning.
But okay, these guys had it almost 1,000 years.
But just imagine 300 more years from today. Like, what
From
does
today.
it look like, right?
Exactly.
Like,
No. Imagine 600 more years from today.
Well, right. If you want to do the whole 900,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if they had technology that surpassed ours before the flood. You know, this is me speculating and just having fun with it, but it kind of makes sense, right? I wouldn't be surprised if they had technology that surpasses ours. That's why we can't explain how they melted rock to assemble walls and pyramids, and why we can't do certain things that were done in antiquity, and we can't even explain it.
Nope.
You know, and that's just like a little example. I'm sure there's other stuff, but if we were able to get to the moon within the past 80 years, 70 years, whatever it is, I wonder if they were able to also get off planet. And I'm specifically talking about Nephilim. If they were able to get off planet, and this is why I said Nick reminded me of this when he sent in that super chat, because if they were off planet, and dude, like, who knows? Maybe the technology we're seeing now is pre-flood Nephilim technology that is still antiquated from a Nephilim perspective, because they're somewhere else further out there, and they have been limited because they can't come back. Because when they were here, God wiped them out. You know what I mean? When they were here, Moses, Joshua, David go Nephilim hunting.
Yep.
You know? So maybe they set up base elsewhere, and what they're doing now is they've maybe procreated, gotten up enough arms, because Revelation is a war.
Yeah.
It's a war. It sounds more like, dude, it sounds more like an Avengers movie than it does than it does Left Behind, the series. You know what I mean? So if I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, Nephilim were advanced, they get off planet, they're mining, they're doing all sorts of stuff on other planets. The flood happens, Nephilim off planet come back in their ships, and they're like, oh my God, where is everybody? We don't know how to swim. You know? So then they go back off planet, and
or they went in the ocean,
or maybe they adapted.
Maybe, yeah.
But I'm just saying, they go off planet, they wait for things to subside, and then what a coinkerdinker. Moses runs into the Nephilim again in Canaan, right? They came back and they started.
The land's full.
They started to try to reestablish this Nephilim lineage on the planet. And this time, though, it's not prominent enough to where God's like, dude, I got to wipe this whole thing out again. This time, the Israelites are numerous enough and God's on their side to where he goes before them and helps them wipe out all the Nephilim tribes. Well, not all, because they let some of them survive, right? But that would make sense to me as to why there would be like a secondary incursion in Canaan in the times of Moses, you know, because these dudes came back. And maybe now what we're seeing is them coming back in mass, because they realized every time we go to Earth and screw around with these humans, God destroys us.
Yep.
So let's go back when we're ready. And then what a coincidence that like Revelation ends with this massive battle between God and Satan and his cohort. You know what I mean? But it's a physical battle.
It's physical battle.
Physical here on Earth.
Yep.
So that was just my idea of maybe they got off planet before some got off planet before the flood, and now we're seeing them again, because this will go into our next topic, end times, baby. You know.
Well, let me make one comment on that, because the fascinating thing, just from an astronomy perspective, is, and we, in this sense, bringing up the idea of the term of astrogeology, and what is well known is when people examine the planet Mars, it is crystal clear that it was one time fully covered with water.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean,
What kind of signs are there on the planet that it?
massive amounts of canyons, like for example, when we look at the Grand Canyon, it's crystal clear that was formed by water. Now I think it was a remnant of the Great Flood. That's why it's all cut out. But so you have just looking at geology. So when they're looking, and there's ice, there's water ice. I mean, I could take a picture of it with my telescope.
Really?
There's ice on the top of Mars. It's very clearly white. That's just my my telescope. But of course, the other the Voyagers and that have gone there to Mars. I don't know if that might not be right about the Voyager, but when they've gone there, they've taken a picture. There it is. So they see, wow, this is all there's erosion all over Mars, and it was covered in water. So what they'll talk about, you can look this up, the Great Flood on Mars. So then you begin to go, okay,
Whoa.
what was there? And did God say, you think you got away from me, but I'm taking you out on Mars as well? Because
Whoa.
so, and in addition, this is, again, we're getting into some fun stuff,
Sure,
and
sure.
none of it. And then you have all the conspiracy, the speculations of that, which is like things that are on the backside of the moon. Now, I find it fascinating. I've never been there. I don't know. I'm not saying it was a fact, but you also have, going back to the 80s and 90s, a guy by the name of Richard Hoagland. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was a correspondent at NASA for Walter Cronkite, and he had massive amounts of information about pyramids on Mars. And
Really?
oh yeah, if you like the Great Face on Mars, you ever see that?
I saw that one.
Okay, so in addition, he's like, look, here it is. You see pyramidal structures. So the question then is, again, thinking out loud, we're having fun. Did they go there? And God said, I'll find you. And so he sends something, and as we know, the moon is full of asteroid, craters and everything else. And so you wonder, something happened in ancient times that God eliminated. So did they go off? If they did, I don't think they're coming back. I think God got them there too.
He got them all, huh?
Well, I mean, hypothetically. So
Right.
just because, but nevertheless, which is what we know, that when Israel gets back to the land, they're there and the land is full. So
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying.
Sure. I get it.
Could it be?
Listen, it's a wild one. I know. But
I think they win the water. I think they're in the water.
And then you have the water.
That's why they're all coming up out of the sea right now.
But you're telling me God sends a flood to Mars, and the flood on Earth, they just we'll just go swimming. Like, good one, God. You know what I mean?
I think they have to inhabit like creatures in the water, and they're stuck there.
Or underground. There's a lot of theories of them going underground.
Yeah.
Either in that some of the theories that you see, again, which is fun to talk about, is that these craft are going into the water, these unidentified submersible phenomenon or objects. They go into the water, and then they have entrances into their underground caverns through the ocean.
Right.
So you have all these cryptids and these other beings that are living under the earth. Fascinating stuff.
It's also interesting that when they in Revelation, okay, this is a good segue to end time stuff. In Revelation, when the battle between Satan and his cohorts going down, Satan against God, right? Both armies are going at it. I mean, they're describing some creatures that sound very hybrid-like. Yeah. Okay. Face of men, tails of scorpion, wings of whatever, all
lion's
sorts
hair,
of stuff.
yep, teeth,
all sorts of manipulated genetic sounding creatures, right?
Yep.
And that's why I'm like, dude, if it comes down to this interdimensional or maybe like off-planetary kind of battle that goes down, these guys have if there were survivors, they've just been getting ready for that day, And now, what a coincidence that we're starting to see the build up to this alien kind of disclosure stuff happening more and more and more and more, right? And it has to, if we really are in the end times, right? Or last days, whatever amount of time we've got left. I don't think that this disclosure stuff is going away anytime soon.
No.
I don't think there's going to be a time in history where they're like, just kidding. Forget about that. Let's focus over here. Like they're strategically teasing this out slowly for a reason. It's going to be used for something, you know? And do you think that the alien disclosure stuff is going to be used maybe for like some kind of Antichrist revelation, or what role do you think aliens will play in end times?
You know, I was kind of I talk to LA probably almost every day, and
Lucky.
Dude, I want to be in that conversation. I just want to like be on the other end of that.
I
Just
know.
listen. I won't say a word.
What if we don't
talk?
talk?
Yeah.
Just three-way listen.
So the other day I'm talking to him, and you know, God has called him, as we all know, for the last 25 years of his life, to researching and exposing not just the trail of the Nephilim, the stuff, I've done stuff with him as, Paracas in the schools, but also all the whole UFO. And he's finding metallic objects at Roswell. I mean, he's out in the fields. So I said, LA, your entire life's calling has been in this UFO movement. And he said, yes. And I said, so imagine 250 years from now, we're hanging out in the millennium, we're doing God's business. And I look over at you and I go, hey, LA, I haven't seen you in 50 years. How you been? And I go, I was thinking about something, LA. Remember back, before Jesus, before he came back and, God called you to do all this UFO stuff. Whatever happened with that? I mean, it didn't come to anything. Why do you think God called you to that thing for the last 30 years of your life, 40 years of your life? And then it really was just a big nothing burger.
Yeah.
I go, do you think we're going to have that conversation?
Hmm.
And it's like, he's like, no. And I go, me either. But something is going to be used of this whole thing. Now, exactly what that means, even he doesn't know exactly. His speculation is that there's going to be an invasion, like of an alien invasion of some kind, and that the Antichrist is going to rise up and be the one that thwarts it, and therefore he's going to gain.
Really?
Yes, and this kind of goes along with some of Alberino's thoughts too. That and there's a lot of different versions of how it could come because everybody's speculating. But
are you describing like a demonic false flag?
Yeah, basically, yes. Well, and this is the other thing is maybe they're actual real physical beings from somewhere else that God has created. Okay, just hypothetically.
This is what I was saying.
Yeah. And so they come in to physically attack, but Satan's got a lot of power, no doubt, we know. Through his Antichrist, he actually thwarts them, which is how you get in Revelation 13 who can make war with the beast. And so he's able to thwart them and crush them, and now he's the savior of the world, and everybody loves him and they follow him willingly, blah, blah, blah. So the question then is Satan in league with them, or does he make an agreement and he stabs him in the back? Who knows? With Satan, he's a liar and the father of all lies. You can't believe anything. So you have a lot of variations of the possibilities. No one knows for sure. But LA also thinks that as soon as the rapture happens, that they show up. And they make the claim that according to New Age theory, the New Agers have said for 75 years that at the end, before enlightenment happens, they have to remove from the earth all of the people that are hindering the advancement of evolution, which that sure sounds like a rapture, right? So you have the New Age thinking, and so the idea would be when they showed up, if we're not talking about a war, but they showed up and said, hey, we had to get rid of those people. So when they disappear, we took them away, just like we've always been telling you. Yeah. And we're here because we're your progenitors, kind of the panspermia, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. And when I talk to LA, this whole phenomenon of 1947 on, or even a little bit before, the whole UFO thing, we're having, like you mentioned, we're having congressional hearings. What's going to come of it? How is it going to be incorporated into the end time scenario? LA calls it the Great Delusion, that this is the great delusion over mankind, that they start believing that we were created by these other beings, which would be fallen angels or something like that. LA's not saying that they're actual physical creations of some other star system. That's one theory. But he thinks that the fallen angels are going to return along with their demonic hordes in order to bring confusion, and they'll masquerade as being the creators.
Yeah, because like, dude, the cat's out of the bag on this one, right? There's no sweeping this out. I mean, there's no sweeping it under the rug. The same way Christians have been kind of bad at two things: incorporating technology in their end times perspective, except Chuck Missler. He was pretty good at that.
Yeah, he was good. Okay? Yes,
he was way ahead of his time, and also incorporating alien talk and discussion and whatever into end times understandings, because those two things have to play a role. Technology's not going anywhere. If anything, it's only going to keep advancing, right? Yep. So if there really is an end times, there's going to be technological systems in place. Probably why the Antichrist or the beast, whatever, can know who does and does not have the mark. Probably why he can cut people out of commerce, that if you don't have the mark, you can't buy or sell. How else would that be possible on the earth if there's not technology? How can everybody see him all at once if there's not technology? You know what I mean? So there's these passages that you're like, that makes sense only technologically. Now there's also passages that make sense only, I guess before you would have called them like supernaturally, right? Spiritually, but can also be, you could fill in the word alienly through the alien phenomenon, right? Like the passage about 3 unclean spirits like frogs. So he physically describes them as frog-like, whatever that means, right? Some people today might use the word
like frogs. Didn't say they were
frogs. Some people might use the word reptilian, right, to describe frog-like. Those unclean spirits like frogs go out to the rulers of the world to deceive them and to get them to go to war with the coming Christ. You know, like that to me is a pretty alien passage, you know? But you guys are saying, well, I shouldn't say you guys, one of LA's theories, maybe even Alberino, that there's going to be a real invasion of some sort, whether it's from another planet, whether it's interdimensional, it doesn't matter where it comes from. There's going to be some kind of manifestation of things, right, that are now coming to Earth, and that possibly Satan is going, or the beast, the Antichrist, whatever it's going to be, is going to be used to defeat that, and then humanity places their trust in the beast. Is it equally as possible to say that the beast or the Antichrist is from them and he doesn't defeat them, but he basically is used by them or speaks on their behalf? Because let's be real, if the Earth is invaded by some kind of like UFO, okay, or UFOs all over the place, if something came out of those ships, looked like us, right? Or not, maybe looked whatever, reptilian, frog-like, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. Looked like a gray with the big eyes, big head. If something came out and went on TV and was like, hey, I'm from those guys, we seeded you, right? We are your progenitors. Here's what we need from you. There's not going to be a soul, except for Christians, unless the rapture happened, like you said. There's not going to be a soul on this planet that's like, no way, bro. Let's put up a fight. Everybody, everybody is going to obey, you know? So is it equally likely that that Satan uses whatever is coming, that they're actually his creatures and his technology, and man will worship whatever comes out of it regardless?
I think when we delve into the realm of speculating, which is fun, almost anything.
It's a hang sesh.
It is. Almost everything is equally likely. and I really mean that
Right.
there's these scenarios. So one could be just as equally likely, but my main goal in all of it is to say this whole phenomenon of UFO everything, congressional hearings. I mean, they're talking about biologics. These whistleblowers that they've not only crash retrievals, but that they again recovered biological entities that were non-human, physical biological entities. I mean, that's a powerful thing. And these guys are coming out at the risk of their own careers. I mean, are they telling the truth? They sure seem they've been credible in every other way. So it's hard not to believe them. Do I believe them 100%? Well, I only believe Jesus 100%. But nevertheless, I find it fascinating that this thing. How is it going to be in there? Is it going to just fade away and not be included?
Nothing burger.
Nothing burger?
No. Right.
I can't see that. That's why I said, why, God, LA, why would God call you to this? And then have it be like, well, that turned out to be nothing. What a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, bro. I mean, but I don't
JK.
Great point.
Yeah, I don't see that. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe God called him, and he's God called LA, so he's excited about it, and he's done a lot of things, and people have gotten saved through his ministry, and so that's what's awesome. And people have come to not only know Christ, but they've grown, they've come to love the Word. So God has a lot of things, but I just find it unlikely that it would be a nothing burger.
Do you think that these